Hey everybody, so welcome to another live session. Today we have John Paul Brizzigatti from Gale Force 9 and a huge show and tell. So excited. So what kind of toys have you brought for us, John?
Too much, actually.
Too much.
Too
There's
much.
No such thing as too much.
There
Come
isn't.
on.
There isn't. This audience is very good at always asking for the
More,
next thing.
more. Yes.
More. But no, with the Toy Fair run the last 5-6 weeks in Gamma, we're as prepared as we've ever been here.
Awesome.
And like many other companies, Gamma's and then Adepticon's become a good time to share. I mean, Games Workshop's announcement kicking off the event has everybody chattering, and of course you can't see anything other than was on the screen. But, but it's a great way to have people speculating. So we've pretty much done the same thing. We've brought things that are real and people can touch, and some boxes that look almost real but aren't quite yet.
But aren't really. Okay.
They're not really.
All right.
Really real yet. So let's kick off with the board game stuff.
Awesome.
Doctor Who hit the stores just before Christmas. Been going down very well. The first thing everybody asks is, where are the Doctors that aren't in the main game? They are coming. There are 4 sets planned.
Awesome.
So you get basically an additional 2 Doctors. The first one is the 5th and the 10th. Inside, 2 TARDISes, 2 more Doctor models, 2 more little TARDIS models. And like the core game, the dilemmas, the companions, the timey-wimey cards, everything is linked to the Doctor's content. So when you see a location and the dilemmas, those are effectively episodes from that Doctor's show sequence. In this game, you've got companions from those Doctors, you're adding companions, you're adding timey-wimey cards. So for this pair, you'll have psychic paper, you'll have Davidson's cricket bat, his celery and his thing, and we'll continue. They'll basically one of these every couple of months. So 2 and 6 follow, 7 and 9, and then in the last quarter will be 3 and 8. That should get us where the timing fits with the new Doctor, the new lady, who we obviously can't preempt what's in that season before the BBC tell us we can.
Right.
And they won't tell us it all now anyway. You can't.
A little too soon.
A little bit too soon.
Yep.
They give you the overview, but it's not enough to make content, so we need the actual footage.
Right.
But we're sculpting the figure, so come Christmas, she will be out, as well as a Christmas special set.
Great.
Which, at the moment, Andrew Hort, who wrote this game, there's so much content in Doctor Who. The fight isn't over what you want to do, it's the order in which you want to do it in.
Right.
You know, Star Trek, D&D, we're lucky enough now that these licenses are all so deep. It's the order, it's the priority rather than, can you come up with something to do with Star Trek?
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And who had more than enough stuff for several years of stuff. So we have 19 will be companions. So we've actually made companion figures. And a bit like the K9 that's in the main game, that interact in the game as opposed to just being a card at the moment that join. It allows you to do some fun stuff where you can leave a companion somewhere, very Doctor Who, where I'm leaving the companion or she's coming with me or he's coming with me to help with some dice rolling. The Christmas special at the moment, again, there's enough content from Christmas specials to make one enormous one, but we're going to go for some cool Christmas stuff in the first one and then do the same thing next Christmas.
Nice.
And we're thinking about companion cards, timey-wimey, maybe a location or dilemma, and some new figures. So you might get Tennant in his Victorian outfit, you might get Smith in his Victorian outfit, Tennant in his or Capaldi. You might find Father Christmas, Father Christmas with a rocket launcher.
Right.
It's a cool model.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? So Who stuff, there's absolutely no shortage of. The nice thing, as you expand, these are all called 5 and 6 player expansions, but in truth, you can play 7, 8, you can just keep playing. The game will scale because you're expanding your base game planet stack and dilemma stack as you do it. So, you know, the crazy thing is you could be playing with 14, 15 Doctors.
That would be wild.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting game.
You can see people that scope of it, or it's a matter of, I like that Doctor, I have them in the game. The nice thing is that when regeneration kicks in and you all have to change, what you own limits you to which Doctor you can move to.
Right.
So the core game, the 1-4 11 and 12 means that you're swapping those as you start to fill in the gaps.
More choices.
More choices. So
Perfect.
Doctor Who. So we're going to
that is awesome.
put these down in the box, and then we have.
This is going to be one big segment of, but wait, there's more.
There's more. Down from under the.
This is a biggie. Folks are really excited about this.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we've obviously Firefly has been very successful. The original game's been out this year, will be its 6th year actually, Gen Con. It was 5 years ago, 5 Gen Cons ago, last year. And instead of just doing a special edition, throw it all together, because there is plenty of content in 11 or 12 episodes of TV, and we hadn't milked it enough for the first game.
Right.
We thought we'd have another go. The key with the first game was that it was all about you being the captain of the ship. You're misbehaving, you're traveling, you're building a crew, you're acquiring equipment, and the core version of it was very Euro style, because you could just interact alone. You could do your missions, and whoever achieved the right amount of money or got to those levels would win the game. But it was about the participation of being into Firefly that made it fun.
Right.
As we added more expansions, Pirates and Bounty Hunters, particularly that added interaction between ships, you could now board people, capture their members. You add Blue Sun and Calidassia added more space, Reavers, more danger. That then gives you the choice of what kind of Firefly game do you want to play.
Right.
This is the individual version. So this is almost while you're flying around on game A, and you do an away mission or you've gone to a planet, this is the crew on the planet doing the actual mission.
Love it.
So we didn't think that you'd play both games simultaneously.
Well, you could.
But you absolutely could. Certainly, Aaron, who wrote this, was very much, that was the feeling that we were going for, is instead of a captain, I'm now playing Mal or Wash, and I'm part of a 5-person team, going down to the surface to interact and achieve some things. Now, the game itself comes with a variety of double-sided tiles. So this is definitely Dungeon Explorer style layout. There are missions that tell you where to put the buildings, where you put your figures, and 3D terrain ready-made actually in the box. So you get buildings. These are this is Eve Downs docks. So these are containers that have been converted.
Awesome.
You'd lay them out. Just pull those miniatures out of the box, because even the box it comes in is another big building.
That's great.
So we like the idea of giving lots of flexibility and expanding on this in the same way a dungeon game does, that at the beginning you're going to get the 5 crew. You get 2 types of NPC bad guys that run around and try and ruin your day. There are cowboys, who fundamentally are the shooting type of character. They're going to try and shoot at you and do you damage from a distance. And then we have some thugs that are, just move that one over there, some thugs which look more like a street gang, and they have close combat weapons, so they're going to run up and try and club you, stab
Gotcha.
you. Very much in the kind of oriental look and feel of the Firefly universe. Each of the figures represents a different character type, so these aren't generics. There are 5 different cowboys. One's called a gunslinger, one's called a hired hand, one's a sharpshooter, and they have varying skill levels.
Okay.
So the guy who's got his particularly long, he is very accurate, but his gun does less damage. The guy with the shotgun isn't as accurate, but if he shoots you, it's going to hurt more.
Yep.
The same is true of the thugs. Big 2-handed ninja sword, big choppy axe, small little hatchets. They represent different people on the table.
Cool.
They react to what they see you succeeding or failing at, which means it's very much about you trying to achieve your mission, so rescue the person, open the safe. But as your main characters, which when you come down to the planet, you are in casual mode. This is you pretending not to be misbehaving. You're not doing anything wrong yet. No one suspects you. Clearly, you're a bunch of trustworthy individuals. That quickly goes wrong. And what you'll see is round each board, the timer tracker, which each mission has a time that it must be achieved by. The timer tracker, there's one for each set of 10. It's for you to keep track of actions that characters and NPCs are making. So on a card you can see Jane in casual mode, he uses 3 time actions and he can move 3. He uses 2 to have a brawl, he uses 3 to and 2 and so on. So Wash is the same. He can open some doors, crack a safe, do some tech stuff.
Gotcha.
The symbols you see, these are absolutely the same visual references from the original game. So tech and diplomacy and fighting symbols. So if you're familiar with the original game, none of this is going to seem out of place. As soon as you start to fail at things, which is bound to happen, the door won't open, you're there cursing, someone spots you trying to break in where you're not supposed to break in, the player has the opportunity to turn into heroic mode where you can do different things. In Jane's case, his model has him with his hat on, he's got his hands in his pockets, he's looking like he's not causing any trouble. When he needs to be Jane, the man with the gun, with Vera, you flick him over and then you replace him with his heroic model on the table.
Love it.
So Wash's heroic model, he pulls out his 6-shooter, Mal's gone from casual to with his full gun, Gale is fixing something, and Zoe has got her firearm out and is blasting away. In this phase of the game, you can feel the speed increasing because your actions are now all about running, trying to complete it as quickly as possible, but each of the players is making that choice individually, so you're moving up and down the time, or you're moving up the time tracker separately. When time runs out, but how each player chooses to use their time, and collectively, if you haven't achieved it by the end of it, you've basically run out of time.
Right.
The heist has gone wrong, too many, the sheriff's turned up and so on. This literally hit the stores here in the States first week in March, so a couple of weeks ago now. England and Europe got their stock at about the same time. I think Australia and New Zealand were about a week ahead. It's a shorter ship.
It's the time travel.
It's the time travel. It's a shorter ship down there. So this is out now. Following on the heels of this, for the people that know, there are 5 of the 9 crew in the base game. So we have the opportunity to bring out the other crew, and you will get a set with River and Simon. So let me just move some of these out of the way.
Fans of Firefly have got to be just going crazy for this, so because if we can't have more shows, then clearly you just need to make more games, and that's how we can continue to keep the Firefly alive for everybody.
Yes, I mean, it has to be said that both us and Fox did not quite realize how many Firefly fans there were out there who were just waiting for something to come along to make themselves happy.
Right.
And the bit that I'm particularly pleased about is that then we did a good job too, so that the games become a staple for the fans to have a go at.
For sure.
And so making new versions, making a different type of gameplay where, in this case, you can play 1 to 5 players, because one of you can play against the AI alone and control all 5, or you can play 5 of you. There's also options so that a 6th person, in theory, could play the AI.
Oh, that's
you
cool.
You can be the dungeon master,
nice,
effectively, and run around just trying to smack other people over the head. But again, River and Simon, you've got some really nice casual poses, and then Simon running with his med kit in his heroic mode, and River in the stabby, choppy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And like the other ones, these are mock-ups, but they're a little too shallow. But this will be another building.
Great.
So to add to a half-size tile. And then Book and Anara follow behind. River and Simon should hit the streets late May. These are both in print at the moment, so they're not far away. and Book and Anara will be Gen Con.
Nice.
So we have Anara, she's in her lovely, looks like a Greek statue.
Yep.
Book with his book, and then Book with his gun. Again, dynamic figures to absolutely make the distinction between, so her with her bow, gun, weapon, which I can never remember what the technical name is for that weapon, and again, casual and heroic versions of them.
Nice.
So that brings the full 9 crew out. What will follow is more locations. So again, it's the parallel with Dungeon Explorers is, you found another dungeon. Osiris docks, so there'll be another box with some more buildings, more tiles, more missions. Another round of NPCs will be added called Fancy Folk, who are fancy folk. They're lords and ladies and people from the parties who will be... they're more in the way than they are chasing you.
Okay.
Alliance troopers were another one that with their big kind of fluffy, they look like French pastry chef hats, and they have their guns that stun you. So they will add. So as the number of creatures effectively accumulate, you'll have hand-to-hand combat specialists, shooting specialists, and we can imagine missions that get bigger and bigger where you use it all, or people are just evolving where now I'm using them with the newer pieces, not the older. The same with the crew is they'll be all 9, but many missions won't require 9. It'll say pick 4, pick 3.
Sure.
This is just a Simon River and Mal 1, and so on. Because I think giving people that scope of exploring the world themselves, and as we've discovered with a lot of the other games, people then telling us, I've come up with a great mission.
Sure.
We see this as a very open system, so if someone wants to write a mission, wants to put things down, they send it through to us and off we go.
That's great. That's great.
So Alliance goons, Alliance troopers with their ray guns, and Reavers. So they'll end up being 5 NPC groups, plus the 9 figures, plus a couple of sets. And that's gets us to about a year out.
That is awesome.
It keeps us busy.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, this year, although we've got some new games coming too, it's expansion-tastic.
Yeah.
There'll be 4 for Firefly, 6 for Who, and then some Trek stuff, and then you'll see the new games. So
Nice.
we're not short of things to hopefully stimulate everybody.
Absolutely.
So let me just pop these back in here.
I think I'm looking forward to getting to play this one some more. We really enjoyed it at Gen Con, getting to see it. I love the whole heroic thing, the casual, and because there's a back and forth mechanism with that too, right? Because once you become heroic, you don't necessarily stay heroic.
No.
You can go back to being casual.
You can go back and forth. I mean, once you've been shot and you're kind of bleeding, lying on the floor waiting for someone to save you, it's a bit hard to say, actually, I'm just casual.
I'm just going to be casual. There's nothing going on here.
There's a mix of circumstances that help. But I suppose very similar to some of the AI in computer games where I've gone out of line of sight. I've gone round the corner. The guy can't hear me now. Therefore, he's like, okay, I'm going to go back to my patrol. It allows you to play around with all of those elements where tricking someone, making some noise, because you're looking at the table as if you planned the heist, or planned the kidnapping, or whatever it happens to be, so that you're aware of where the bad guys are, because you're not stupid. Otherwise, those criminals end up in jail.
We wouldn't
really
have
quick.
a TV show. That's how it works.
So we have the blue
Trek
guys,
time.
the blue guys, and the pointy-eared guys.
Nice.
So last year, finally managed to get out the Cardassians and Ferengi that have been delayed from the end of 16. They came out in the first block of 17. Everybody was very happy with those, particularly the Ferengi that add real. There's a very different dynamic with playing with Ferengi. The other 4 races are about conquest. I mean, the Federation about tea and yoga and being nice, but it's... but
everybody needs to just get along.
No, it's the whole Earl Grey. But the Ferengi being very parasitical, being able to succeed without it being about, I built my fleet, opened up a different style of play. And then, of course, in the second half of the year, just after Gen Con last year, the Borg which
of the Borg.
That's a whole new experience, and the Borg's definitely been something that we. The amount of people, and you were there, seeing it and trying it out, that from that show went, oh, that's really cool. And and so if I'm the first person to get consumed, I then become the Borg, means that actually...
So awesome. You're not out of the game. That's the best mechanism
ever. It's one of the few times that being dicked over early in the game it doesn't leave you feeling bad.
Nope.
You're almost volunteering
You may
yourself.
still end up the winner. That's how that works. The loser and yet the winner. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And again, in a lot of these games, trying to very much tick our own boxes for what do we want to see, how do you solve some of these puzzles, and a lot of this IP has got so many different ways to interpret it. Trying to find the right one and then mechanically make it work is a lot of fun, but it's definitely why we stick to properties we really love, we really like. Forcing the guys to make a game for anything is doable.
Sure.
You can make a game out of anything if you try hard enough.
Right.
But that's not what the GF9 brand means. And we've been very selective about keeping that both under a manageable number of brands at a time. So not going crazy we're going to do 20 licensed things at a time, 30 licensed things, because I think that's a different business model. That's very much Fantasy Flight's realm. It's where they were a board game maker who wanted to make lots of board games. We're a miniature company that started making board games. We like making board games. People like buying them. We've got some really good properties. It allows us to keep doing it going forward.
Sure.
And that's, to some extent, it gives us the freedom to be more selective.
Absolutely.
And it does mean that when we get to where do we feel things are going to work or not work, if it doesn't work, we can just wait. Because the rest of the business isn't dependent upon a Star Trek expansion or Firefly. So design is never, in theory, it's to schedules. And on paper, we have a new production manager in New Zealand who joined us just before Christmas, whose sole purpose is to absolutely try and keep all the creative people to a set of deadlines, because the business runs on deadlines. You've got to finish things and so on. But it is herding cats. I mean,
creative minds. Oh, squirrel! We should do this.
The two things are at odds against each other. So the business needs to complete things, and then the reality of that sometimes creative stuff comes together really quick, and sometimes if you force it, you'll get the wrong answer. And so we are lucky that people aren't waiting on their paycheck in case it takes a bit longer.
Sure.
Particularly for the games which are the competition in board games and the amount of great product coming in board games is so high that why are we doing what we're doing, why are they doing what they're doing, is you're offering choice to the gamer, not saying we make good stuff and they make crap stuff. That's not how the market is anymore. Tabletop miniature games is the same. You've got an increase in just great product where each company is trying to decide what piece of the puzzle, what niche are they focusing in. Is it small scale, skirmish, Euro style figures? It's infinity. And being able to hone in and say, if I am that kind of gamer and that appeals to me, that's the game you should be trying. If you want to play historical tank battles, it's Flames of War. If you want to play giant fighting robots, you go and play with 40k.
Right.
And each of those are different choices that we make as gamers, and as you can see at this show, very few gamers are now only one thing.
Right.
And last night with the Geek Nation tour guys, we were talking about their group, and the idea that you used to be a 40k player, a Warhammer player, and you said that almost as a badge of honor. I'm a Flames of War player.
Right.
Now people I play a bit of everything, and that's normal. That's the average gamer, rather than I can only do one, because like this audience here, it's 90% adult. Money is not the problem.
Right.
Everybody who's here this weekend, spending money is not what's holding them back. It's time.
Time, for sure.
Time to play, time to interact. Do I have groups? There was a couple of guys last night who were big Ascendancy fans, who when I showed them these, they were like, oh. Yeah. And of course, the first thing they then ask is, where's the other race that I want in the list? And
right, like, there's more again. See, there's
no way. There's no way to make everybody happy. So you kind of get the tick for, well, obviously you had to do Klingons and Romulans at the beginning.
Of course.
And Cardassian and Ferengi, an interesting choice. And, how are Vulcans going to be different? But some of it is that it's all hobby content, which means it is a choice. It's us making a decision, and then between CBS and then the public saying, did you like our decision? Are you okay with it? Does it make sense? And as we've discovered with Trek, the people who love this game really love this game.
Yes.
One of the guys who's actually come all the way from Australia, so he's probably travelled the furthest to get here.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yes.
That's dedication.
Yeah, no, him and a group have come with the tour from Oz, and they were talking about playing Trek, setting up an ascendancy game, starting a dozen feet apart. To make sure that they had a good 4-hour plus build an empire before they interact with each other.
Don't bump into each other too early. That's an interesting school of thought. Yeah.
And you go, no, that's I've used all my planets. I've used everything before my empire's ready. But I want to encounter you is a great way to do it. So
that's great.
So Vulcans will be out first, Andorians later. This is Q2, probably about Origins time. There's the show circuit between Origins, Gen Con, and Essen. That gives us our 3 hooks, so we tend to be now aiming for some product for the public at one of those to get the excitement up, but also reward people who go to the shows, where I think going to shows and being able to touch and feel something brand new is part of the excitement.
Right.
And Gen Con is the crazy of crazies, where you need crowd control that first day.
Right.
And I still the original launch of Firefly and the never seen it before, didn't know what to do. Once you've got a stand wrapping around your 50 by 50 stand that goes around on itself, and you're like...
And the fire marshal's going, you got to do something about this,
Now companies have got a lot better at it, and it's more of a predictable rush, but like these events here, it's changing annually. The number of people get excited. And like this weekend, we're in 2 places at once. There's a Doctor Who show in Baltimore. So there's a crew there with just a Doctor Who stand showing it off. So I've got some great selfies of gaming table with a Dalek, gaming table with Tom Baker, a gaming table with Peter Capaldi.
That's awesome.
So Star Trek, more content coming.
Did we have a question? Okay.
Nope,
we're good. Nope, we're good.
We're good. Now, this is where how the industry works is, and it's part of what I was talking to the group last night about, is advance warning and knowing the risk you're taking. Licensed product requires commitment, and I'm talking about commitment with the company. When you talk about something like Spartacus or Firefly, our early licenses, we went to Fox, we said, hey, you've got this great thing, Firefly. They look it up in the system. Oh, yeah, that's ours. We'd like to do some games. Oh, okay, what's that? We explain it. They say, okay, no problem, off you go. And the expectation was set at a low level.
Okay.
So when success comes, no problem. At the other end of the spectrum is the BBC. Doctor Who is their number 1 earner. Intellectual property is expensive. Depending on what you want to do with it. If you want to make action figures, you want to make a computer game, you're going to be paying millions of dollars for the permission.
Right.
Master toy license for Marvel, for Black Panther, 55 million advance minimum guarantee.
Whew.
So the scale is all about that. You've got from 55 million down to hopefully not much.
Right.
But as you prove that you can do it, of course, perception changes. So as Firefly has become more successful, Firefly now has a different price tag to it because we...
Now look what you did. Yeah, that's what that is.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you're balancing expectations of companies. I mean, Fox, we're on our 5th game for them. The relationship's really good, and they understand how now board games work that 5 years ago they didn't.
Right.
CBS has made board games for years. They understand what the board game value is worth, but with them, we agreed a specific type of game we were going to make. So Ascendancy was a request for the 50th anniversary. It was a style of gaming. They didn't just say, you can make any game you want. We don't want a quick and easy card game. We want something epic. We want something that covers the story arc. And that gave us a different place to work from, but it also meant that IP started its life in a different place to something like Doctor Who, where Doctor Who's expectations are high, it costs serious money straight out of the door, which means that as a business we're trying to mitigate some of that risk by showing the people that need to be excited about it, which in the early stages is not the public, is the buyers. So these empty boxes, and they literally are empty boxes with a logo on them.
Empty boxes wrapped in plastic. That was tricky.
That was just to stop people thinking that there was something really inside. But these are from the Toy Fair circuit 5-6 weeks ago, because everybody from the Amazon and Barnes & Noble buyers to distribution to stores need to know we plan to release an Aliens game in October this year. It's going to play similar look to the Firefly, 30mm figures. We had some lovely resin Aliens and the Marines and Ripley. Unfortunately, they've been in resin and they've gone to 4 shows. And the Gamma suitcase...
So now they're in crumbles? Yeah.
Well, Blair's suitcase got lost on the way back. So we have an empty box, but we have no models. So there's currently a bag somewhere with his clothes in, which I don't really care about. But inside also a whole bunch of D&D stuff, Alien stuff, and some Doctor Who figures that I hope will appear.
Right.
Or they'll be on eBay.
Right. Yeah, like, exactly. We're going to have to watch that really carefully.
But the setting the expectation, putting them in place now, and although there won't be a lot of detail. I mean, Aliens for October, it will be end of May, June before we'll be showing real content. Means that as silly as it is, an empty box, a logo, it's a $50 box in a square box from us. Is all I can give people at the beginning. It's
tangible something.
It's tangible something. And of course, that's the speculation, a bit like you've got all of those expansions coming for Doctor Who. Can I ask you what's coming in 19? It doesn't matter how far ahead you go. People want to know the next thing, the next piece in the puzzle. Now, Aliens has actually got a full plan. Andrew, who wrote Doctor Who, is currently working on Aliens. He's probably about 3-4 weeks away from having it done. Visually, we're progressing. Models are designed. There'll be 16 xenomorph figures, 8 designs times by 2, 5 Marines, so half a squad plus Ripley. Ripley version 1, because she's Ripley, she's like Gandalf.
Exactly. There's a lot of looks there. Yep.
By the time we've given her end of movie stuff, save Newt in the power loader, she'll have a few.
Nice.
The game is actually set in the Aliens movie, so it's Hadley's Hope. It's specifically that rather than the open-ended Alien franchise where you're trying to make sense of the awful movies 3, 4, and 5 content. I think I can say that now. I think the world understands that. And of course this was James Cameron blockbuster, so there's a lot of depth in here. But because very much like Firefly, it's about scenarios, it's about interacting with Save Newt from the facehuggers in the thing, or full-on bug hunt, all 10 Marines, plus the sentry guns, trying to shoot as many aliens as you possibly can within a certain time frame. It will expand similar to Firefly, the other 5 Marines, Bishop, Burke, Newt figures, and then Ripley, probably some 3D terrain, some eggs and facehuggers and bits and pieces to go with it. So very much a style of game that I think people who like those miniature games will understand, and it's Aliens.
Perfect. Oh boy, October.
Now this is modern design at its best. At least that's what several people at the show thought. They were like, wow, you've gone retro and it's really simple. And I'm like, no, it's a secret. It is a new D&D game, so it's not Tyrants. It's in a black box at the moment because that's all I can show, because The content is linked to the new modules coming in September and November.
Wow, nice.
So the new campaign setting, which isn't public yet, will be end of May, June, I think is the launch event. And like we did for Tomb of Annihilation last year, where they do this great couple of days, they get some celebrity crews. It's the first time in my life I've ever had anybody put makeup on me before I get to be on camera. Which
nice.
Was,
you mean we could do that?
No,
Dang, we missed an opportunity.
That was an interesting experience, and sending some selfies to my wife and daughter of I'm in a chair.
I'm getting done up.
Having my lines removed was interesting.
That's awesome.
But not nearly as much as when they saw who was there, because they said, "Oh, it's a work thing, and you're going all the way to Seattle, and that doesn't sound exciting." Until in the green room because the live feed of the group and the green room where everybody was basically hanging out. The celebrity men who were there. Mm-hmm. My daughter spotted Dylan Sprouse first, and she said,
"Wait,
what's this?
You just became so cool, Dad." Oh my gosh.
So I had to go and talk to him and say, I'm sorry, I'm a grown up, you're a grown up, but I need a picture of you. So I sent that, and then my wife spotted Joe, who is a definite hunk. Even men acknowledge how hunky he is, and he's a big guy. And so but of course, aside from the celebrity aspect of it, they are D&D players like anybody else.
Right.
And so the conversations were about, Joe's character, Arkan the Cruel. What does the character do? Where does he see it going? What's its current level? The build, which only D&D people could talk to each other about without ever thinking about any of those other parts of it. We've actually ended up making the Force Grey character figures, particularly thanks to Joe and his willingness to. Last year I said, I can make you your figure. We'll get one of our guys to sculpt Arkan the Cruel for you, which of course as a fanboy, that's partly it's good celebrity PR, but the other bit is if you said to a normal D&D player, would you like your figure turned into a physical thing? They'd all go, cool.
Yeah, yes.
And so they reacted the same way, which was lovely.
That's awesome.
So we've got to expand that out, but it does mean that and I think it is the first week in June, there'll be another event in a studio somewhere, LA, Seattle, where Wizards will be telling people what the next Tomb of Annihilation cycle is. There'll be groups doing the Twitch feed. Mm-hmm. I'll be there pimping my stuff, showing off the figures, and in this particular cycle, showing off this game. Now, the bit, 60, 90 minutes, 2 to 4 players, 14 plus, $50 in a box. Because I can't help being cheeky, it's actually in my nature. On the back of the box content list is actually real. So this is where we got to where there's a lot I can't say, but it's definitely going to have 40 adventurers to hire and locations to control and treasures to find and magic gun, which pretty much could be anything.
Right, you just described D&D. Okay, got it.
D&D,
yeah.
But that's true. So I felt like I was sharing enough to say.
Okay, we'll let it slide. We'll let it slide.
But yes, that will be, that's a Gen Con release.
All
so that will be the queue. That will be the thing that you will be in the queue for.
Absolutely.
For this Gen Con. Now, in the suitcase that's missing with the figures is a couple of other D&D things. D&D is in a unplanned, wonderful, upward-moving graph of an edition comes out, it has its launch year, it goes down a bit the following year, finds a level playing field, and for the next 4 to 6 years, it stays there until the next edition comes along.
Right.
Fifth hit, and it's grown year on year for the last 4 years in a row by somewhere between 25 and 40%.
Wow.
The amount of people now who have tried D&D in the last 4 years equate to 20 years, 25 years of gamers of the past. The scale is really quite staggering. We're talking about millions of people in America who have picked up a player's handbook. And, the Twitch, the groups, both the younger generation and my son and his friends, they got starter set, they play at lunchtime at school, they'll play a bit. They're not quite playing the D&D I play,
Right.
They don't take it as seriously as I think the earlier generation did, but they're playing D&D. They have characters, they roll dice, they do stupid things, they laugh when somebody bangs their head on a door, trips and fails, which that's what really is entertaining about
that
D&D.
is.
And so that generation has got into D&D in a way that they've got into board games as a more casual part of the industry, but the scale, the number of people is just phenomenal. So we've seen it with all our accessories. I mean, the core 3 books are selling more copies each year than they did the year before. So those kind of stats where the player's handbooks outsold 16 in 17, 18 looks like it will outsell 17 is amazing. The Xanathar's book, fastest selling book in Wizards history, to beat the Tomb of Annihilation, which was the fastest selling module before so it doesn't seem like that's not going to continue. And certainly looking at the 60 million cards that we have to print every quarter now for a round of spell cards, and it's 60 million individual cards each time, and you go, is this really?
A lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
It is. Last year's numbers were quite scary, and you keep thinking that somebody's going to just pinch you or prick you and say, it's not real.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Not, it's not. It's not going to keep going. But every quarter, and Wizards are seeing it too. So D&D's in a new area where board games and our commitment to bring out a new game each year we're sticking to. But of course, what we're putting in it, why we've thought about the content that's coming, the subtlety of the expectations are ourselves and WizKids, who are the other company with a physical license, as opposed to most of the licensees. When we have our meetings, there's about 30 companies, 27 are digital.
Yeah.
There's UltraPro, there's WizKids and us that make physical things. The card range is going to have 3 new decks added to it. So spell decks, you guys have shown these off. If you've lived under a rock, you don't know what they are, but they are reference cards. They're reference cards from the Magic Item, the Player's Handbook, to give your wizard quick reference rather than having to keep flicking through the book. So
nice, yeah.
Very handy, durable, and they're functional. They're a very tactile way of having your spell book in your hands. Monsters and Magic Items have been given the same treatment. So the Magic Item deck, 292 cards. It's every Magic Item in the DM's guide apart from the legendaries, mainly because they take up 2 pages of text that you can't
Those would be really big cards.
Yeah, well, you end up with a card that says, don't be lazy, look it up in the book.
Yeah, right, come on now.
So we left the legendary out, but monster Magic Item cards that fundamentally have the artwork on one side, so you can literally put it out in front of the players and say, you found this. And on the back is it's a Berserker sword, it's a bead of force, it's a potion of whatever. Monsters are getting the same treatment. We grouped monsters into 2 blocks by challenge rating. So 0 to 6, so low level encounters up to about 4th, 5th level. It's all the creatures in the monster manual for that. And they are two-sized. Standard cards, so if the text fits on a standard playing card size, that's great. If not, we made a double-sized card.
Oh, nice.
So ones where you could get more on it just meant that's... So you get double and single-sized cards in there. I think that's got about 170 cards in it. And then creatures 6 to 16. The key being it's not 16 plus, because a bit like the legendary Magic Items, you cannot fit the Tarrasque on a card. It's just, there's, ancient
there's
red dragons. There's
got to be a line somewhere.
There's a line somewhere. So we were thinking about ways that maybe to do them as a promo, and the idea of, like comedy show, here is an oversized card.
That would be pretty good. So
maybe
actually.
at Gen Con you might see a Tarrasque playing card that will be the size of a page of letter, because I think that's just a cool idea.
Yeah.
Here's my handy card. So we've got 3 card decks coming there, scheduled for June and July. The first pair will be Origins. The third one, I think it's Magic Items, will be the following month. In that same slot, because the summer tends to be the quieter period of the year, when you look at the release timing of a book in April, May, something in September, something in November, you've got lots of content to keep you busy playing.
Right.
And then in that run-up to the next September, the summer is about as quiet as you're going to be, which is why announcements get made then, and we have filled that summer slot with the non-module related product. So the card decks, and for the first time in D&D history, paint sets.
Nice.
D&D paint sets.
That's awesome.
Now, we've not gone berserk. This is not about a D&D paint range. If you're a painter already, you know where to find the colours.
Right.
This is about that new generation of people who are playing for the first time, haven't encountered models. The WizKids range, particularly of the unpainted 2 figures for 5, are wonderful. They're a great way to just grab a character, put them on the table. And people want to be able to paint. We get lots of requests for it. Connecting if you put 10 paints and a brush and a miniature in a box, and it's got D&D on the front, it helps.
Oh, for sure.
And that's very much what the thinking was. So we've made 3 codes. It's an adventure paint set that has 10 colours, a brush, and a special model, which is Minsk and Boo, in a plastic. So it'll give you your first figure to play around with.
Great.
And then a monster set where you expand 36 colours, 36, 32, 36 colours, some washes, some metallics. So to get you to you want to try some more, but you're not going to go and buy an entire range yet.
Right.
Plus a new monster, so you get a monster in there, which is our new owlbear, and a brush set. So those 3 codes tick the intro box, and all the guides in there will say, now go and buy the paint range. Now go and find places that sell.
Right.
Because
Nice.
the deal is with Army Painter, so we're basically sending people to Army Painter range, but if you know how to paint by that point, you're going to buy Citadel, you're going to buy Army Painter, you'll buy Game Color from Vallejo.
Right.
That's not the trick. The trick is something to just make it easy.
Getting somebody started.
Started.
Absolutely.
Because I think, and you guys know better than any, that the mental block of people feeling that things are hard is a mental block. Actually, painting, when somebody sits down and says, let me show you, isn't nearly as scary. But when someone stares at unpainted figures and then they stare at really nice stuff, their brain does not get them from A to B.
Nope.
You have to gently show, and you take it for granted if you're one of those people who can do that, but remembering that my first figures were awful. And awful for all the reasons of I was 9 or 10 and it wasn't acrylic paint, it was little Humbrol pots. And even showing those to my kids, I had my original solid base D&D figures in a old cigar case, cut out the little foam, and I stored them. And that's about the only really old figures I've kept, because most of them were just awful. You have that embarrassment as opposed to, no, this is nostalgia.
Right.
And the things that they both said were, yeah, you didn't know how to paint really well. I'm like, I was 10, give me a break.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
And the second thing is, they're really small. And of course, in those days, figures were more in scale than they are now. So that you see an orc or a space marine, and you put it next to an old fancy figure from 25, 30 years ago, they really were small.
Yeah.
So D&D's got lots of content coming this year.
Exciting.
It is. There isn't much left actually on the schedule this year with the aliens and everything. That's almost, normally I've always got and there'll be one more surprise. I haven't.
Okay, that's it. He spilled the beans regarding all of that. But you're not done.
No.
Because there's just a few things out on the table here yet.
There's a few more things out on the table. So that's, as far as games go, that's got us to the point where that keeps that bit of the business happy and certainly motivated. Lots of releases to bring. Flames of War and Team Yankee are seeing more content this year, as well as tanks. Flames of War, the last of the Desert books, is about to hit the stands any minute now. A British book for the 8th Army, brings out some new plastic kits of Valentine and Churchill, and the ability to use some of the American vehicles, priests and Shermans in their force. The Desert War is effectively covered. You've got a book for each of the major forces, and we move on to the Eastern Front later in the year. So over the summer, Stalingrad first, followed by Kursk, books of Germans and Russians, lots of plastics, lots and lots of plastics. Plastics have become, they're essential part of, I think, a lot of company's ability to deliver both quality and they're cheaper than
absolutely.
Other figures, and we're no exception. So this year we've made, I think, 16, 17 new kits. Next year it's about 30.
Oh, wow.
So the Russians, both the Russian and the German armies, out of 60-odd codes, there will be, I think, 4 or 5 each that are still metal and resin, and everything else is plastic. So guns, tanks, infantry, which, when you think of one of the obstacles everybody's got of time is an issue and money isn't, but if I can give you more value for your money, you'll feel better about it.
Absolutely.
That's part of the puzzle too. And so plastics allow you to charge less for individual models, and that is helpful. It's, I think, more rewarding when you look at what you've invested. So Flames of War is going to have an exciting year. We'll finish off at the end of the year, not finish off, in between the two pairs of books for the Eastern Front, there will be some para books. So a German para book and a American para book, Screaming Eagles and Death from Above. And those are slightly different to the current books because they are mid-war and late war in the same book. Right now we're in mid-war. Those will have lists for Fallschirmjäger because largely their miniature ranges are very similar. So you'll be able to field Fallschirmjäger in mid-war and Fallschirmjäger in late war, American paras in mid-war and American paras in late war. There's a bit of gear changing, but if we've made a really nice range of new figures, they're good for both.
Awesome.
So we thought we'd get those out. And 2019, we'll get to late war. So the people, I mean, like everything you ask, when's the thing I want coming? You can't answer everybody, but we're going at the speed we can go at.
Makes sense.
Team Yankee's got 2 books coming as well. Free Nations, which hits in end of May, is NATO forces. It's Dutch, it's Canadians, it's Australians. Got to tick all the remaining markets, and the French. So unlike the other NATO, the Team Yankee books that were 1 nation per book, this has got 4 in it.
Okay.
But those forces tend to use, apart from the French, the other 3 use a lot of equipment that the Germans and the Americans used before. So you're dipping back into the German range or the American range, plus supplementing it with some specific Dutch or Canadian, Australian units. So there's some interesting mix match there where you have Canadians driving a British tank with an American APC with an American helicopter, or the Dutch with an American helicopter with a British tank.
Sure.
So the forces are for interesting, and if you know the period, that all made sense, and if you don't, sorry.
It will after the books.
It will after the books come out. We go to the Oil War. Will be the following book. That's to do with war in the desert, so it's Iraq, Iran, the forces there, and in a similar way to the NATO book where you use, both sides use some NATO equipment, that's exactly the same. If you're a bad guy, I don't know if there's good guy, bad guy. If you're using Soviet equipment, you're a bad guy for me. But some of the armies in the desert were using ex-Soviet era gear, and some are using NATO gear, so the armies that exist and the model range as it's growing allows us to do some of these forces.
Gotcha.
So Team Yankee's got some good stuff coming. Flames of War, multiple books. I mean, they're both 15 mil is still a big bit of what we do.
Sure.
So we have to feed that beast. Tanks is getting Tanks Modern, so Team Yankee tanks, effectively.
Awesome.
That's going to hit over the summer, and it is exactly the same game, but cards and models for the modern era.
Great.
You're not going to be driving around shooting a 1985 Chieftain at a World War II tank. The World War II tank doesn't stand up very well, or you need 48 of the World War II tank in points. So
that table might look really interesting.
No, I mean, statistically you could, but I don't think it's the same way the scaling in the World of Tanks game doesn't really allow you to do that.
Yeah.
A tank from 1936 shouldn't be fighting against a tank from 1986. But the nice thing about the range is that we've spent the last few years building up the plastic range for Team Yankee. So, like with tanks, we're straight out with a dozen tanks. plus helicopters, because they're nothing but flying tanks, so you get to have helicopters.
And they're awesome.
Yes.
So,
and rockets and models, and you get to make cool noises as you zoom across the board. So 15 mil, lots of ticks this year. Board games, we're busy. D&D, never a moment. And as if we didn't have enough, Terrain, Battlefield in a Box, is getting a serious injection this year, for lots of reasons. We make 95% of what we do in-house, and our plant has to learn new tech or evolve new work as we go, largely to meet the challenge of, we'd like to do this, but I don't really want to keep dealing with factories in Asia that take forever. They might be unreliable. The supply is always difficult, which is definitely one of the battles, the business side of being in the hobby industry, that it's not everything can be made in-house.
Sure.
And as much as we try, as the factory has evolved, and partly because it's run by actually Jeff Brooks, an American who, both him and his senior guys, Kai Rule, his 2IC, they are serious hobbyists, serious hobbyists. So they get the whole tick of model and building and what it is that we can do. But when you've got a building with 100 and something people in it, where you can say, I can now make these guys make cool stuff, and then we can make some money out of it, means that a lot of what we do is about having those conversations and someone saying, I've come up with a cool idea. We think we can now do this. The engineering has moved to the point where terrain building used to be by hand. Jason and Liz at GF9, who are our master terrain builders, they sculpted. They get they literally physically build it out of hand. The digital world for models has also allowed us to do terrain in 3D. We have 3D equipment in house, so printers and so to go from, I've had an idea, someone spends a day or two building it in 3D, they literally print it for me, and I get a box arrives, and I go, ooh. Oh, yeah, no,
here's my new idea.
Here's what I was thinking.
Instead of this,
and instead of imagining it and going, oh, well, it's going to take weeks for somebody to do that, so we better brief it properly and have those conversations. That's basically allowed us to do, well, we like that, let's just do that. Let's just send some of those to KL and see how it goes. And because the gamers appreciate the whole, so you're not just doing one set of stuff. No, we'll do whatever people want. And listening this last year, we've been hearing not just new ranges. What's out on here is the Galactic Warzones range that there'll be a bunker and some objective markers, that hollow projector, defense towers. I mean, these are meant for what they're meant for. But at the same
whatever would that be?
But at the same time, Battlefield in a Box, which is coming up to 10 years, the Gothic range, rivers, hills, not just for the 15 mil, but for the 30 mil market, has always been one of the things that people, they want. They need a ready out-of-the-box solution.
Right.
So this year, as well as a new range, supply of the Gothic and there's almost a year's worth of new shiny that we've never shown the world sat waiting.
Yeah.
And it was all about production. It's all that boring stuff, but it is about production flow, about teams, about the ability to just say, well, if we press go, can we really have 3 or 4 new things a month this year?
Right.
And this year, the answer is yes.
Yes, we can.
Because I'm not relying on other factories.
Sure.
So as well as new terrain, of which there's 7, 8 codes in Galactic Warzones, there will be 20 odd Gothic codes. Some are variants from the past with new paint schemes, which that's come from feedback where people said, oh, we love your grey, but could you paint it sandstone? And we're like, of course. It's just, the team having a second ID board where they take it off the wall and say, okay, these have to be painted in desert.
Yeah.
Hills in dune or in brown, or rocky things in Mars red and so Gothic will probably end up in sandstone, white, frozen, Mars red and grey.
Wow.
Rivers in blood red and tar and toxic and blue.
Nice.
So that you can, that's the tick that as gamers, I'm like, oh yeah, I have a river, but blue rivers all the time looks odd. So have a Death Guard army want to use toxic rivers, so let's do some green rivers.
That's cool. Yeah.
Which gamers instinctively aspire to, and then they realize they run out of time or space, or, and like your recent articles on the Julio's table, and that whole, the joy of having both dedicated space is, it's still limited. It's still one table. You don't have 6.
Exactly.
You've not got a basement where I can leave out table A, table B.
Right.
And so pre-painted terrain that hits the mark. The other piece of the puzzle, and it's what we were talking about earlier about value, is this can't be as expensive as models are. I'm a great believer in the fact that if your board cost as much as your army or took as long to put together, it was too expensive. Battlefield in a Box is about value, so that, you know, a couple of buildings painted in resin at $25, $20, $25 for walls, a generator for $25. It's death by $1,020.
Right, right.
Is you might well end up owning $500 worth of terrain, but I won't have made you hand it over in one go, and hopefully that feels better that you've added to your collection piece by piece.
It's a lot easier to swallow that way, for sure. Yes.
Now the last thing, which is on the table, and we can only see in the angle, which is neoprene gaming mats. Now these hit the market, probably 2 years ago, I think. We're the first company that, I can't remember who it was, maybe one of the European companies. It wasn't Fantasy Flight, but Fantasy Flight had theirs out, and then Games Workshop had them. Technology to do big mouse mats has become readily available. In this hall there are 8 companies selling single-sided mouse mats, gaming mats. Artwork, it's a digital file, you're printing it, it looks really good. The challenge of, we could be company number 9 and do exactly the same thing, or we took some time and found out how to make double-sided mats.
Love it.
So double-sided mats for the same money as single-sided mats. So that's the back to the value thing. It's a win-win. So the first one, this was done for the Desert for Flames. It's green flock and desert color on the other. That's the 6x4. The rest of the range for space mats, the 3x3 range and 6x3 range, there's 4 of those hitting the market end of next month. They're on the water right now. And we expect to see some more 6x4 and 4x4s themed more aggressively towards the 30mm universe. You know, the lava, the blood, the stuff that fits very much with this audience here who are blood hungry, toxic, you know. Every table here has got something oozing from it or something leaking on it.
This is the only place in the world where you can say things like that, and it's true, and it totally makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah, that's true, because that's my soundbite that will get me in trouble. Well, you said oozing.
Well, John Paul said,
no, that's, but again, it won't take long, I suspect, for some other companies to work out how we've done this or find out where we've done it from. But currently, you know, that's our new trick. So gaming mats, along with the terrain, are getting a serious injection, because I love the idea of, yes, you can buy it in blocks, or here's the mat, here's the terrain, we've thought it all out for you. You're going to go and spend your time building and painting your army. Here's the gaming table that you can wrap up and put in a box in the corner, and you know, that ticks the box for an awful lot of guys guys and girls who will be happy that they don't have to think about that.
Right.
Given that we're all low, we have the DNA tick of never quite satisfied. I have a set of these, and as we were doing them at Christmas, I was finishing a Death Guard army. And I had the bright idea of getting some of our Gothic ones so I could corrupt them. Okay. Which, on the surface of it, you go, okay, so I had some masters sent. I've got them there. I'm going to make a bit of tentacles. I'm going to put a bit of bubbles. It's a Nurgle board, so I want some Nurgle stuff. But then the rabbit hole, you see the rabbit hole, and I find out that I don't actually have the right strength Dremel with the right drill heads to make the right kind of holes in the resin that we make. So I need to buy a new drill. So down the rabbit hole I go. Right. So what was some nice Gothic pieces that I get for free turned out to be a few $100s on a really cool piece of gear.
Well, that's all right.
So I could do these really cool, and I was so pleased with it after. But of course, the project that was meant to be my Christmas break has turned into, I'm still doing it now.
It's work, yes.
And I have 2 tables full of terrain, which when they're done will be lovely. But that tick is in us all, and no different to some of these, where some of the guys who've bought some of this stuff in the last few days are like, oh, it's great, but you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to change that thing. And you go, that's the bit that you are a hobby. You're in the right hall. You're in that right group here. Because if you didn't want to, even if you never do it, the idea of wanting to change a few things that we did is absolutely, that makes perfect sense for everybody. You know, the panel, the little red, why don't you paint the little panels red? And you go, that's a functional thing of, you know, the paint team and how long it takes to do it. But that's a really good article that will appear, that someone will say, I've done the buttons red and blue and green.
Here's how you do it.
Here's how you do it, and
absolutely.
off you go.
That's cool.
So I might actually have an article with, you know, here's how you take this really expensive Dremel gear and make your corrupt.
And here is the Dremel that I bought, and
here's the link, and you know, this is how desperate it gets. Where I mean, it has to be said, after 27 years now in the market, is walking into a store or not knowing somebody from one of the other companies is rare now.
Right.
So that when you have I really like your stuff, you just call up and say, can you send me a box? Or I go to a shop who's a customer and say, I'd like some stuff. And they go, oh, okay, no problem. But you don't shop like a normal person. It's terrible.
Yeah.
My son tells me off it. He says, but you just get stuff because you feel like it.
I just have a guy and I know somebody. And
he's like, but you might not play with that. I said, yes, but if I don't leave the shop with something now, I feel like my trip to the shop is wasted.
Yes.
You have to come away with something.
You do. It's a requirement. It's a requirement.
And very much that thing of, so I don't go through that experience quite the way most people do. But when you get to the, yes, but I do want to convert something, I still have that same tick of, now I've got it. It's not quite perfect. It's not quite what I want. And it's a terrible, terrible disease we all share. But,
It's all right. It's a thing we all have in common. I think we have a couple questions.
We do. First question from one of your more popular games, Spartacus. Will we see expansions?
No, I'm afraid not. That is, the Spartacus rights have returned to the company, largely due to stars and who they use to do the rights has altered many times. They basically hand smaller properties that aren't on TV, once they're gone, are handed around between agents, and there's been some changes. And when we went and said, hey, we'd like to leave it on the market for a while, it was we're going to need a load of money, and we're like, okay, don't worry about it. The good news is that Spartacus is a historical game. There's a few people in there that are only from the show, but pretty much the show pinched a whole bunch of names from real people. So our plan at the moment is to have Spartacus, the Game of Blood and Treachery, with artwork and come back to life as Spartacus, the Game of Blood and Treachery. So it'll be second edition Spartacus that will be an own brand version. So the game's not dying, it's just in the queue behind Aliens and a few other things at the moment.
In transition.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's exciting.
The second question was related to the paint sets that will come with the D&D figures. Will they be in unique bottles or just the standard dropper bottles?
They are in 12 mil Army Painter bottles, so slightly less paint, but they're in the dropper bottle, so it's the same design as Army Painter. And they are Army Painter colours. So although when you get your guide, Bo and Jonas are working on this at the moment, and we've given them D&D names, so it's Cobalt Red and Remoraz Blue or whatever, Beholder Purple. It refers in the guide and on the paint bottle to the Army Painter colour it refers to. So that purple isn't a new purple, it's the purple from the Army Painter range. So that when somebody wants to go and find it, and there'll actually be a chart in there that says, Drow purple is also this Vallejo colour and this Citadel colour.
Oh, nice.
Because it isn't about saying, I don't want to make a range of individual pots and sell a rack of... There's enough paint ranges in the world as it is. It really is about just that first, how do you interact with paint at the beginning? We give you a brush, we give you a model, you work out how the 10 colours will work, and then as you expand, but that's where we see it stopping. So this isn't about trying to put individual D&D paint pots out in the world to compete with Vallejo or the Army Painter range that exists. So
awesome. Very cool.
All good.
Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Oh my gosh, that was quite the show and tell there, John.
It is. We've it's been the last few weeks. This has been the drill, but of course, this is the first show where people's eyes light up differently. I mean, as lovely as some of the buyers in the world are, you don't quite get the same reaction or the whole "wow, that's so cool." With the exception of one of the new buyers, which sometimes I'm not a strongly religious person, but I do know sometimes my prayers are answered. Buyers for some of the very big companies change reasonably regularly. They're big companies, they turn them around. Amazon, every 6 months we might see somebody new. The new gentleman this year came up to the stand at New York, get introduced to him, young man. He's been in the market for a few years. We start talking, I start to go into I've got all of this laid out on a little booth, so I'm doing the talk, and as we get to the thing, and he says, let me stop you, I'm an Ascendancy fan, and I'm like, this is so easy now.
Yes.
so the whole conversation's about so what have you got planned for Ascendancy? And the PSI, or the agent that help us with them, they're there with the blank look of, what are you guys talking about?
Right.
He says, we don't understand. And
your conversation went to a whole new level.
Because we're now having a conversation that's not about the SKU and the weight and when its delivery date cutoff will be. Is, that'll be all good. Oh no, put us down for some of that. Oh yes, more Star Trek stuff.
That's awesome.
So that was very refreshing, because it's the toy fairs are not normally, they're a bit drier. And by the time we get to here, where everybody's just like, you guys rock, you make cool stuff. When can here's my money, give it to me straight away. And from now through to Gen Con, you get to ride that good feeling, and as long as every show we come up with something cool, everybody's like, yep, we're happy to have you back.
Right. Well, I don't think you're at any lack for that.
No, not this year. Not this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time
with
pleasure.
Us.
I think that was great fun for all of us. If you have anything in particular, we have extra questions for John Paul. Just get them in the comments, and I'll chase them down here the rest of the time at the show.
No problem.
And we'll leave it at that, I think. Make sure you take time, comments on any of the things throughout the show, because there's VIG swag bags up for grabs, which include a copy of Star Trek Ascendancy.
They do.
They
cool.
do. They
cool.
do.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I know, right? I got you covered.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Thank you.